You met someone for the first time, and within seconds, before they'd said much of anything, you'd already decided who they were. Trustworthy or shifty, warm or cold, your kind of person or not. And here's the remarkable part. Once you formed that snap judgment, it stuck, sometimes for years, coloring everything they did afterward. We judge people almost instantly, and then we cling to that first read with surprising stubbornness, even when the evidence starts to disagree. Why do first impressions form so fast, and why are they so hard to change? The answer is a tale of two brain tendencies that, together, can quietly distort your whole view of a person. Start with the speed, because it's genuinely astonishing. Research shows that people form impressions of others almost instantly, judging traits like trustworthiness, competence, and likability within a fraction of a second of seeing a face. 1/10 of a second is enough to form a strong impression, and giving people more time mostly just makes them more confident in the judgment they already made in that first instant. You are deciding who someone is faster than you can consciously think. The judgment is made before your reasoning mind has even shown up. Why would the brain judge so fast? Because for our ancestors, speed mattered enormously. When you encountered another person, especially a stranger, you needed to know quickly. Friend or threat? Safe or dangerous? Should I approach or flee? There wasn't time to gather data and deliberate. A fast, instinctive read of another person based on their face, their posture, their expression could be the difference between safety and harm. So the brain evolved to make these rapid judgments automatically, sizing up other people in an instant, because hesitation in the face of a possible threat could be fatal. The snap judgment is survival machinery. This rapid reading of people has a name. We take a thin slice of information, a face, a few seconds of behavior, a handful of cues, and from that sliver, we construct a whole impression of who the person is. And astonishingly, these thin slice judgments are sometimes quite accurate. The brain is genuinely skilled at extracting meaningful signals from very little, but sometimes they're wildly wrong, based on irrelevant things, a passing resemblance to someone else, a facial feature that happens to read a certain way, a mood the person was in that has nothing to do with their character. The brain doesn't distinguish. It builds a confident impression either way, and then it commits. And that commitment is the second half of the problem, the part that makes first impressions so durable. Once you've formed an initial judgment of someone, that judgment acts like an anchor, and everything you observe afterward gets interpreted in light of it. This is anchoring, the way an initial piece of information sets a reference point that shapes everything that follows. Your first read of a person becomes the lens through which you see all their later behavior, and that lens is remarkably hard to take off. It gets reinforced by a familiar mechanism. Once you believe someone is a certain way, you start noticing and remembering the evidence that fits your belief, while overlooking or explaining away the evidence that doesn't. Decide someone is cold, and you'll register every distant moment as proof, while dismissing their warm moments as exceptions or as them faking it. Decide someone is wonderful, and you'll forgive their flaws as off days while treasuring every charming moment as the real them. Same person, same behavior, completely different interpretation, all driven by which first impression you happen to form. Your judgment quietly curates the evidence to confirm itself. There's also a halo effect at play, especially with first impressions tied to appearance. When someone strikes us as attractive or warm or competent in that first instant, we tend to assume they have other good qualities too. One positive trait casts a glow over our whole perception of them, so we judge attractive people as more intelligent, more trustworthy, more capable, on no real evidence at all. And the reverse happens with a negative first impression, where one off-putting quality darkens everything. That initial glow, or shadow, distorts our reading of the entire person, and it all traces back to that first split-second judgment. Put it together, and you see the trap clearly. The brain forms a confident impression of a person in a fraction of a second, based on a thin slice that may or may not be accurate. Then it anchors to that impression, filters all future evidence to confirm it, and lets a single first read color the entire relationship. A person you misjudged in the first instant can spend months or years fighting an uphill battle against your initial verdict, while you remain convinced you saw them clearly from the start. The first impression isn't just a starting point. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It can literally become self-fulfilling, in fact, because how you treat someone based on your first impression shapes how they behave toward you. Decide someone is unfriendly, and you'll act guarded and cool around them, which makes them act guarded and cool right back, which confirms your impression that they're unfriendly. You created the very behavior you predicted, then took it as proof you were right all along. So what do you do, knowing your brain works this way? The first step is humility about your own snap judgments, holding them more lightly. When you meet someone and instantly feel you've got them figured out, remember that your impression formed in a fraction of a second, on almost no information, and could easily be wrong. Treat that first read as a guess, a hypothesis to be tested, rather than a verdict to be defended. The simple act of staying curious, of being willing to be surprised, of saying maybe I've got this person wrong, keeps the door open that anchoring and confirmation bias would otherwise slam shut. It also helps to deliberately give people second chances, and to actively look for evidence that contradicts your first impression, since your brain is naturally inclined to do the opposite. If you decided someone was difficult, go looking for moments of warmth. If you wrote someone off, ask what you might be missing. This goes against the grain, which is exactly why it's valuable. You're consciously counteracting a powerful automatic bias, and in doing so, you give people the chance to be more than your first half-second guess about them allowed. Some of the most important people in your life might be ones you misjudged at first and were generous enough to look at twice. And remember, this works in the other direction too, that you are being thin-sliced and anchored by everyone you meet, just as you do it to them. Your first impression on others forms in an instant and tends to stick, but it also means that if you've made a poor first impression somewhere, you're not doomed, because the same person capable of anchoring to a bad first read is also capable, with a little grace, of updating it. People can revise their judgments. It just takes effort, on both sides. The next time you meet someone and feel that instant, confident sense of who they are, pause and hold it loosely. Your brain just made a lightning-fast judgment from a thin slice of information, anchored to it, and is now ready to spend the entire relationship gathering evidence to prove itself right. That first impression is a guess, not a verdict, and the person in front of you is almost certainly more and different than your half-second read suggests. Stay curious. Look for what contradicts your first impression. Let people surprise you. The most interesting person you'll ever know might be someone you nearly dismissed in the first 2 seconds.